I want to encourage you to at least get to the hiring managers or the C-suite, actually make it to some of those longer, more final rounds of the interview process before declining the remaining of the interviews.
Welcome to Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I teach you how to get promoted, get paid, and bring your whole self to the leadership table. I am on a mission to change organizations from the C-suite out because women are the new face of leadership, and we are doing it on our terms.
Hello, corporate badasses. Welcome to another episode of Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and super excited, as always, to be here with you again this week. So I have a lot of clients who are actively interviewing right now, looking for their next higher level leadership role, or maybe they're in a role and they're expecting some big changes about to happen at their organization, and they're thinking about what's next for them. And if you're one of those clients, today's episode is for you, because I'm going to share with you how you can begin to evaluate organizations as much as they're evaluating you. Now, I first want to talk about myself as I get into today's episode. So one of the upsides to owning your own business is that you get to choose your clients. I get to choose the type of work that I do. I get to choose who I work with. I don't have to pick up the phone for anybody and everybody. I can choose who my clients are. And you've probably heard me say this before, but I'm the luckiest person in the world because I get to work with women who inspire me so much every single day. And if you've never had the opportunity to work with me, I am also equally inspired by you, because even as I'm recording this podcast episode, I get reached out to from women who say, "Hey, we've never met, but your work has changed my life." I just got that email, no joke, this week from somebody who had been looking for their next job opportunity forever. And then they finally put into practice what I talk about on this podcast, and they got offered a senior director role. Congratulations. So these are the type of women that inspire me. And I know for you, you might be looking at your next job as like an opportunity to get inspired, right? To be inspired by the work that you do. I also work with a lot of women who work in industries that give back to the world, right? Like we're working in healthcare, we're developing cancer drugs, like everything, under the sun that's like actually making the world a better place. And it can feel really good to do something that you're getting paid for and you're also passionate about. Or maybe you're working inside of your subject matter expertise, and this is something that you've gone to school for many, many years, and now it's all paying off and you're getting paid for the job that you love, 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 love to do, right? And that can be an incredible feeling. And hopefully at some point in your career, you've had glimpses of that. And if you're not feeling that right now, or you're unemployed and you're looking for what's next, that's okay. You can still evaluate the organizations that you're interviewing for or thinking about joining as much as they're evaluating you. Now, even as I say this, I call BS on myself, right? Because look, if you need a job, if you're not making it past the final rounds of interviews, if you don't have 3 or 4 offers on the table, then let's face it, you may not feel like you're in the position of evaluating them. Yet, you still might be making choices on a regular basis that are going to put you in an opportunity of growth, right? So that you're actually taking a step up. Your next job isn't just another job, it's actually a step up. Like, so whether it's a higher title or a company that you actually care about, or let's say a boss that actually seems cool to work for, whatever that evaluation criteria might be, you're thinking about it as a step up. Now, the problem here, and you've probably faced this before or second guessed yourself, is that as much as you want a step up in your next role, consistently thinking about evaluating them can definitely limit your opportunities, right? So you might find yourself in a constant state of evaluation. and not in actually getting job offers, right? So again, like I said, it's easy to say, oh, I'm evaluating them, when you have a couple of opportunities on the table, a couple people to choose from. So you're like, oh, I picked that one, right? But let's say you don't have a couple of opportunities on the table, but what you do have is your own integrity. You're like, I want to work at a company that matters. I want to work for a job that matters. I want to work for a boss. I want to take this step up. I want to use this as an opportunity to grow into my next leadership role. So in those cases, you can still be evaluating them. But if you spend too much time in evaluation, it quickly turns into its ugly stepchild, which is judgment, right? And you've been there. You feel like you're judging organizations, you're judging bosses. And in today's episode, I just want to share with you some of the red flags and those fine lines between judging, overthinking, overcomplicating, hoping and wanting your job to be the answer, meaning that you're over evaluating companies and you haven't even been offered a job yet. And that can be really bad and very, very detrimental. It can, lengthen your time on unemployment. It can start making you feel like you actually have to settle because at some point you feel like you just do need a job. You will take anything and everything just because you have to get back to work. And I don't want that to happen for you. So there is a balance between evaluating organizations and not overthinking it or not turning it into judgment mode. All right. So I'm going to give you some ways to kind of know if you're towing that line and sort of where you're at. Now, the first thing I want you to remember, so step number 1 is that unless you've actually been offered the job, you haven't been offered the job. Or unless you've actually been given an interview, you haven't been given an interview. And this matters because you might be somebody that's like, I don't want to interview at this company because I've heard weird things. Or I'm not saying that the company is unethical and you've heard that it's a horrible culture. Like, don't interview with them. But let's say if you're like, I'm not too sure, I was really looking for like a mid-sized company and this is a really big company. Or, I don't really know anything about my boss. Like, I don't know. I'm not going to make up criteria, but whatever that criteria that's putting a red flag. Like, oh, I just had this criteria come up for a client. She was like, well, they operate on Eastern time zone, but it's a remote job, right? And she's in Mountain time and it's a remote position. And so she could still work from home, but they kept putting this emphasis on Eastern time zone. Right. And saying, hey, but you're going to have to do meetings in Eastern time. Or like, let's say you have Asia, meetings in Asia, and you've been there before. You have taken on opportunities that don't work out for you and you hate it afterwards because it involves a lot of travel. And there are definitely reasons to say no to job opportunities. But a lot of times we're evaluating them and the opportunity way too early. So the first thing, when I say step number 1 is like, have you been actually given the interview yet? Have you actually, made it to the final rounds yet? Is that check where you're at in the process. Now, if you're incredibly busy and you have lots of interviews coming up and you don't have a lot of time and you know that this one company is not a good fit or the position's not a good fit, then just don't do it. Okay, fine. But let's say you do have the time, but you're overthinking it ahead of time, right? So you haven't even been given the interview yet. Let's say you have made it through the first couple rounds and you're not really feeling it, or you're like, look, I don't know about the Eastern time zone thing. I don't know about the travel. I don't know about the title. I don't know about the compensation, right? And you're starting to feel yourself pull back, wanting to drop out of the interview process. If it's really early on, I want to encourage you to at least get to the hiring managers or the C-suite, actually make it to some of those longer, more final rounds of the interview process before declining the remaining of the interviews. It is very possible even to make it all the way to the very, 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 very final round and get the job offer and actually decline the position. I just had this happen for a client accidentally, meaning that she was pursuing 2 opportunities at the same time, and they both came to fruition the same week. So she had no choice. She had to say no to one of them. I mean, that was not her intention, but imagine if you only had one job offer and you said no to it. That's fine. You don't have to take the job that's on the Eastern time zone or in Asia or with a lot of travel or where you have to go into the office. You don't have to actually take the job. But what you don't know yet is, are those criteria set in stone? Is this the end all be all? Is this what everybody is doing at the organization? And the best way to find out is to have negotiating power. So you can have negotiating power even if you're interviewing for a director level role, but you know you really want a senior director role. I've had clients go all the way through the interview process as a director and then spin it at the last minute and say, I really think this is a senior director role. And maybe that company rewrites the job description and gives you a senior director title, or they don't. And if they don't, you can still turn it down. But what you've learned in the process is being a better negotiator, right? Being able to show your worth, to show the value that you bring at your organization. So much so that even if they can't rewrite that job description, now you've wowed them. And even being able to stand up for yourself and to say, hey, this isn't the right fit for me, and here's the reasons why, then you have negotiating power for another role at their organization. Or maybe they're impressed by you and they really wanted to bring you on, but they can't right now. And so they're going to put you in touch with another leader at their organization or somebody else, right? Like they're going to do you a favor. So it's always really important, if you're evaluating organizations, if you're evaluating opportunities, that you consider where you're at in the timeline. Is it worth your while to go through the interview process anyway? Is it worth your while to have a little bit of what I call that effort attitude in the interview process? Where it's like, yeah, you're evaluating them. So you're saying things that you wouldn't have normally said. You're pushing back about certain things. You're actually saying, hey, this role is definitely should be titled at senior director. It's not a director level role. I'll never be happy, whatever that might be. Maybe it's not the right compensation. And so you can use it as an opportunity to negotiate ahead of time, right? So as part of the evaluation process, you can, evaluate them. So that's one thing, is to figure out, where are you at in the interview process? Are you about to be offered the job? And then maybe in this particular case, you might want to tell them no. Or are you so early down the pipeline that you haven't even given a shot and you haven't learned anything about the process? And so you might as well proceed and grow and find a way to get better at answering your interview questions, get better at pushing back, get better at negotiating, whatever that might be. And then you can still evaluate them and still not take the job. Another thing that comes up for a lot of my clients is that they will say things like, I need to really care about the organization. So if you're somebody who, like I said, is very fortunate enough to work in an industry that really matters to you, like I said, for myself, every single day I'm giving back to the world. I am so many women's lifeline right now, as they're going through so many difficult times at work and in the media and everything that is happening for people. This is not a great time for women in the workplace. And I get to be that lifeline for them. So this is a job that I'm passionate about, and I also get to make money doing it, right? Like that's a great win-win. And so working for an organization that you're passionate about can be very, very fulfilling. But the problem with that is that when you're evaluating companies based on their mission and the work that they're doing, and that's your sole criteria, then you might find yourself seeking for approval outside of yourself, right? So I have a lot of women that will work at larger organizations. Like I had a client early on who worked at PG&E, and she always said that she worked at PG&E's side hustle. So she worked in the legal department of the foundation that supported PG&E, right? So it's just Pacific Gas and Electric, no big deal, like whatever the work that they do. I mean, well, it's turning the lights on, but it's like, most of the people who work there, they just work there, right? But she was able to work in a side hustle department and really do very fulfilling, very life giving work in this side hustle, right? So a lot of times you might find yourself in a specific department or division or something where you're able to really give back. So I'm not saying that it's not important to do that, but I'm just saying there's so many ways that we can find ourselves giving back, working on something that we're really passionate about. The other thing to consider when you're evaluating your passions would be that pay scale or whatever you might be able to, like, let's say, AI is very big right now and you want to work at an AI company and you're going to get paid like a ridiculous amount of money. It's possible that you could work at this organization, get a really high title, a ridiculous amount of money. You can manage the hours that you work, meaning, I'm not saying that advocating for working 80-hour work weeks, but you can say, okay, I'm not necessarily passionate about this company, but because I have work life balance, I'm making more money than I ever was before. Now I can give back in other ways, like maybe at my church or volunteer organizations or financially give back. And so there are so many multiple ways that we can stay in integrity. I'm not saying work for assholes, but we can stay in integrity and we can give back and that we don't even know how that's going to play out, right? And so I encourage you that if you're looking for a job to fulfill your passion, be very open in how that's going to play out. Again, go through the interview process. You might find a passionate job just because your boss is so freaking cool. And you're like, I love partnering with this boss. This is the most amazing job I've ever had. Yeah, we're not changing the world, but the work that I'm doing on a daily basis feels so fulfilling. So give it a shot. Again, at the end of the day, you get to evaluate them as much as they're evaluating you. So you get to choose, right? I take this job, I don't take this job. But along the process, it's important to give it a shot, to actually challenge yourself. Could I turn this into something? Can I learn something about it through this interview process? Learn something about myself. The third and final way that this really shows up for women in a negative, the red flag, is when you are not going for specific titles. So you'll say something like, I don't care about the title. I just want a job that matters, that's fulfilling. And so you're evaluating them, as much as they're evaluating you, and you're like, I'll just go into this company and whatever title. And so then you might go for like a lower level title so that you can just see, do they wow you? Do they have a good culture? They have to prove themselves to you. But one of the problems with that is that at the director level, or let's say senior manager level, you're not really in a position to have the level of influence and authority that you might be desiring in a job. And so whenever you find yourself saying a little bit too frequently, I don't care about the title. All I care about is whether or not I like the job. And if you're laughing at me right now, it's because so many women who listen to this podcast are past that, right? Like they've figured out that the title does matter. But if you're not there yet, I just want to challenge you to question, because I do think the title matters. And on that evaluating standpoint, what I recommend is that if the title is too low and you find yourself going on multiple job interviews and getting called in for jobs that are below your title, again, I recommend doing the interviews, challenging them to up-level the role, having conversations, be very clear in your conversations, not just like, I want a vice president level title, but why you're wanting that title and what kind of impacts you want to be making. Still continue to entertain those conversations. Now, you don't have to go that long down the interview process. It might drive you crazy because you could be like hating the job the whole time and you're not really interviewing very powerfully. But I do challenge you to make the title matter. And then also on the flip side, to be willing to engage in those initial conversations so that you can figure out and learn a little bit more about the company and what types of titles and what type of fit they might have available for you. So, as a recap, I really want to remind you that truly, truly, you are evaluating your organizations that you're working for as much as they're evaluating you. No matter what stage of the process you're in, no matter how long you've been interviewing, it is important to stay in that integrity and to know your worth, know what your value is that you're bringing to your organizations. And then it's also important to challenge yourself and ask yourself along the way, hey, am I closing doors unnecessarily? Am I getting enough opportunities? Am I getting enough job offers? Am I putting myself out there in that higher level leadership way? All right, my friends, good luck. I hope that this episode was useful. If it was, and you have a friend or a colleague who you think could benefit from Women Changing Leadership, I encourage you to share this podcast episode with them. And otherwise, I wish you the best of luck in your company and job evaluations, and keep in touch. All right, I'll see you again next week. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to Women Changing Leadership with Stacy Mayer. If you enjoyed this episode, you are absolutely going to love and benefit from the work that we're doing inside of the Women's Leadership Accelerator. This month-to-month membership program is unlike anything else in the market. We are single-handedly flipping the unemployment rates on their head. It is the only place on the internet where you can actually get yourself not only a job offer, but one that has a higher salary, a higher title, and more recognition and influence than you ever could have imagined in your career. Inside the Women's Leadership Accelerator, we are getting women promoted. We are getting them multiple higher level job offers. And I want that to happen for you. Join us in this one-of-a-kind program. You're going to get coaching directly from me, my executive mentors who are also hiring managers who are doing the work, who have worked with me personally for the past 3 to 5 years. We are here inside of this accelerator program to work with you personally to begin to elevate your leadership to that next level. This is exactly what you have been looking for, and I am here to deliver it to you. Best thing, it's month to month. So you can come in, join us, get access to all of my training materials, my weekly live interactive calls, and you can begin to bring your friends into this community. It is the most corporate badass community on the market. I can't wait to see you in there. Go to authenticallypowerfulwomen.com. We are changing the face of the leadership table one promotion at a time. I can't wait to see you there.